I could not imagine going through life without a community. For some people, church is their community. For other people, their family is their community. Lance and I had many communities. We had so many things going on in our life. It was so complicated that there wasn't one single community that could understand every facet of our life. So we had multiple communities because of that. And we didn't just go through the motions with these communities. We immersed ourselves in every part of it. And because of the life that we live, we refer to each one of these communities as our family. So our church family prayed with us and supported us through time spent together. Our gym family supported us through our mutual love and sometimes our hatred of working out. Our ECD family, the patients and loved ones of Erdheim-Chester disease, laughed, cried, prayed, hoped, and dreamed with us. We all supported one another, knowing better than anyone else the difficulties we faced each day. And even our friends, we referred to as our friends family because we had a lot of friends from different groups. And as Lance's disease progressed, we didn't get to spend time individually with our friends anymore. So we would have one big party, usually a potluck in our house or in our backyard. And all of these different friends would get together and have this party with us and just be able to spend quality time together. And Jenna, you were at several of those parties.
I was, and they were always so fun. There was so much joy, and I can't help but think that the reason why there was so much joy is because it was such a broad variety of people from different parts of your life, and you had curated a group of people around you that just loved you guys and were genuinely there to support you. And not everyone takes the opportunity to do that, to really find the people in their life, regardless of what circle they come from, that are most supportive and um, maybe the least judgmental. I guess I don't know what better term to use, but maybe they're just patient. But you guys did a really good job of taking advantage of those opportunities to see the people around you, regardless of where they had come from, what circle you found them in, whether it was your church family or your gym family or your friend's family. And you said, these people in these different circles, they are our people. And you kept those people close.
And I'm so glad that we did it that way. And that was really important to Lance. He was such a people person. He was such an extrovert. And those parties were really hard for me because it was a lot of work putting them together. But then when I would see Lance in the middle of it, just loving every moment and all the people that were there and all the time that he got to spend with them, it was just so worth it. And as I move forward in my life, it's been 4.5 years since he passed away. I'm seeing just how important community is in my life and how different the community looks now compared to then. And I still have more than one community, I would say, but it's not like it was then. And what I'm finding now is that I just need to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with the right people because grief doesn't go away on anyone's timeline, no matter what anyone wants. I would love for my grief to go away, but I don't know that people understand, even though it's been 4.5 years, that sounds like a lot of time. Logically, it sounds like a lot of time, but that's taken your emotion out of it completely. I sat with my husband when he took his last breath. And I am still left with that image imprinted on my mind of what he looked like, the sounds coming from his chest, the sound of the oxygen concentrator, the smell in that room, the atmosphere in that room. It's still there with me today. And it's not something that's going to go away just because somebody wishes it would. So surrounding myself with people who are understanding of that and who allow me the time that I need to process this and to grieve as I grow, because I am growing and I'm changing. Spending time with people who have different interests than I do is really important, because that is one of the things that is helping me grow. But it's also just as important to make sure that those people have the same values that I do or have similar values to mine.
It's funny that you mentioned values, because the older I get, the more I realize that that's non-negotiable. Like, I have to have people, even if our belief systems aren't exactly the same or our opinions aren't exactly the same, our value structure needs to be similar enough that we can have conversations about literally anything and be able to communicate effectively. Because if you're coming from a position of a different value structure, I think it's like speaking two different languages. So when you try to communicate, it doesn't translate well, and you're going to end up really frustrated and I think just unheard. And so will the other person that you're trying to communicate with. And so it can really wreak havoc on a relationship. So having a value structure that aligns with someone else's, I think, is absolutely foundational for having a strong and resilient relationship.
For me, this is something that I think I've just realized in my 50s, but I don't know if I've just realized it because of the life that I lived with Lance, and it wasn't something that was really on my radar. I may have noticed it when I was in my 20s if Lance hadn't been diagnosed when I was 23, but then my whole world revolved around that. So I guess I'm just noticing a lot more things now as I get older, because I'm not a caregiver and I'm not almost solely focused on Lance and taking care of him and what he needs.
And I would say for me, like, kind of same thing, but I had my first child when I was 20. So I really dove headlong into my life is about caring for this child. And then it became these children because I kept having them. It was the same thing. It was like, I think maybe I knew this when I was young. I understood value systems, but it's really easy to get distracted with like opinions, things that are like opinions and beliefs, and even just the activity, like, what are you doing now? And so something that happens with people that have, when you have kids, you start kind of gravitating toward people who have kids the same age. So you have something in common. People hang out with their coworkers and develop friendships with their coworkers because they have work in common. Once you take that out of there, right? Once you leave that job, think of how many people have their best friends with their coworkers and they leave that job and then they don't talk to those people anymore. Or maybe you have a best friend that you have kids the same age and your kids grow up and then you don't have anything else in common. You realize, oh, it was just our kids we had in common. And so you found kind of your relationship revolved around that. So I think it's a similar thing as what you're saying is you were focused on caring for Lance. So then it's like that became foundational to all your relationships. Maybe it was just even like who could tolerate the relationship period, seeing as how you had so much going on in your own life, right? You had the limitations that came from being a caregiver. So you had to find people who could tolerate that in a friendship, that didn't require more. And that was like instantly you would notice, maybe that isn't going to work because you want me to drop everything and come over and hang out. I can't do that.
Mhm.
I think as I got older, like you said, I realized, no, I need to have the same value structure. That way, doesn't matter what's going on in my life, doesn't matter what's going on in someone else's life. We still have a connection because our core values are the same. We have a point of connection no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in.
So, what would you recommend to somebody finding their community after they've gone through a transition and realize that their community is no longer there?
Well, I think that one of the things that you kind of have to do is look beyond the obvious. Like I think that's a really important point for people to realize if they've come out of a season and maybe they're entering a new season of life. So maybe it was for you um, going through grief and the loss of your husband and coming out of the life of a full-time caregiver, or maybe it's an empty nester, maybe it's somebody coming out of divorce, or maybe just you've moved to a new place and you don't know anyone. Whatever it is, when you enter a new season of life, you are going to need a community around you. And I think the thing that we do is go look in the same places and the typical places, the places that are from our past were places that we found our community. So that familiarity, maybe that isn't the best guide for finding your community because that was a different season and a different time. So I think when you're looking to grow, I've used a plant analogy, growth. If you're growing, like if you've ever seen a root bound plant, it needs a bigger pot to be able to keep growing and keep thriving. So if you keep trying to put yourself into the same pot, you'll just, even if it's a different color or a different shape or something, it won't work. You have to expand, you have to change something. And so sometimes that's looking beyond the familiar things and opening yourself up to new experiences or new types of personalities, people that you never thought you would be friends with,
Right.
right? And being open to that possibility.
Yep. And I think that's why it has been easier for me than I thought, because I didn't want anything to do with, not that I don't want anything to do with the communities that I had, the people that I had in my life. It's that those communities served a different purpose. And I am looking for community that will encourage and support me in a different way, because I'm not a caregiver anymore and I'm starting over, and I need people who can understand that. I need people who will hold me accountable. I need people who will be supportive, people who will be empathetic, because sometimes I have really bad days still and I can't get out of bed. But then I also need people who will gently nudge me when I get stuck where I'm at. And do it in an understanding and supportive way. And so I'm just thinking about the people that I've met since I moved here and how I met some of them. And it's not something that it's definitely not something I would have done when I met Lance, but it's been really cool. I've had some great friendships grow out of these unusual ways that I met people.
Well, I think that's, like I said, it's just important to not rely solely on familiarity in the same places and the same circles. But I will say, when you mentioned like coming out of that caregiving community and realizing I'm not in that space anymore, I don't want to be in those circles anymore. I think there is something to be said for making sure that we're not being reactive to anything negative. Because I know for me, I've had several experiences or circles or communities in my past that there were individuals in those circles that caused pain or trauma or grief or whatever in my life. So I kind of avoided those circles altogether because I thought I don't want to have anything to do with that anymore. And I do see a lot of people that are really reactive to whatever hurt them, so if you get bit by a dog, all dogs are bad, right? And it's not necessarily the case. So I think it's just finding that balance of opening yourself up to whatever is available. And like you said, they've been interesting and unique situations, and that's what it is. Open yourself up to whatever may find you. And when we're going in a healthy direction on a healthy path, I believe that people cross our path who are also on that same journey toward the very best version of themselves. Like, I just think if you're going that direction, you're going to encounter other people that are also going that direction, whatever is the best for you.
That's a really great way to explain that. And I hope that this is helpful for people looking to find their communities, especially after going through a transition. Well, thanks for joining me, Jenna, and I will see you next time.
All right. Bye.